share my screen. Okay, so let's take a look first at number 18.
So for 18, I was one who asked. I understand like why C is the right answer, and like I understand why the other two are wrong. I just am a little confused on like one part of the question where it talks about socially efficient quantity of output. Would socially efficient quantity of output be where private value equals like the private cost plus external cost, or would it be like where private value is above private cost plus external cost?
Yeah, and let me see, what part of was that in the beginning of the question that it mentioned the social value?
It mentions it in the question. It's like in the answers, it's like it talks about socially efficient quantity of output.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So when they're talking about socially efficient quantity, that's exactly right. Basically, just the quantity that the market should be producing if it was including the externality.
So it should be when the private value equals private cost plus external cost.
Yes.
So in
Yeah.
this case, it would be the quantity would be at 2.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that's all I had for this question. I just wanted to like clarify that.
Okay. And
And
then the
then
next one was
yeah,
32.
32.
Okay. Okay. And for 32, was it a specific part of the question or just kind of the question generally?
So I've been stuck on this question like for a long time already. I also emailed you about it, but I still was confused. Basically what I did was like I solved it two different ways the first time. First, I found average total cost, which didn't really do anything for me, but then I found marginal cost. And when I find marginal cost, like from 2 to 4, the marginal cost would be 5. Like it's 10, but then like you'd have to divide it by 2, so it's 5. And then like it goes up, and then at from 10 to 12, I forget like what the exact number was, but at 12 it's the lowest. So I still don't get like why oh no, 12 is not the lowest. Actually 10, like they're all 555 all up until like 12 hits 9 and then 14 hits 13.
Okay.
So I'm still confused like why they would go with like 10 or less.
Yeah. So basically for this one, do you remember I'm trying to remember if I emailed you a graph along with
Yeah,
the
you emailed me a graph, but I didn't understand the
Yeah.
way
So,
this.
like for the graph, basically when you're thinking about marginal cost, remember how when marginal cost intersects with marginal revenue, there's usually that it's not increasing rapidly at that point. It's just kind of starting its upward trajectory. And so basically at the point where marginal revenue and marginal cost intersect, that is the point where usually it starts to dramatically increase.
So, but like how would we know what marginal revenue is here? It's not even it's like it's not given. So I'm a little confused.
Yeah, so for this one, the thing I would do is like, so when you were correctly calculating marginal cost, and you noted that from uh, 10 to 12, it was what did you say it was, like
9.
9, and then from 12 to 14, it was 13.
Yeah.
So when you're doing marginal cost, look at the numbers and see where it starts to dramatically increase.
'Cause
Um,
from 8 to 10 was um 8 to 10, hold on. Yeah, 8 to 10 was 20 and then divided by 2 was 10, I think.
and before that, the average was 5.
5. Yeah, so it was 5, 5, 5, and then it was 10 and then 9 and then 13. So that's why I was like really confused. Like why would they like because like 9 is less than 10. So that's why I was confused. Like I'm like,
Yeah, no, it is weird that normally marginal cost doesn't dip. It's like constantly increasing. So what I think they're trying to get with this one is basically just the concept that marginal cost, when it starts to dramatically increase, usually in a monopolistically competitive market in the long run, that's a sign that they're not going to produce anymore. But if you're like moving from 10 to 12 and then it decreases a bit, that's really unusual. If the concept, I guess, does the idea of like marginal cost, does that kind of like process make sense?
I mean, it made sense. Obviously, I would say also 10 because it went from 5 to 10. So I would say like either 10 or less. But then when it dipped after, that was the most confusing part. 'Cause, like I didn't really understand like why it went from 5 to 10 to 9. It was kind of like really confusing. So if that's like the main process that I need to know, like when it starts to increase, you produce there or less, then like then that I understand.
Yeah, that's the thing I would take away from this question. I would not focus too much on the weirdness of the dipping because that's very unusual for a marginal cost curve.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
And the next one was 39.
39. Okay.
So this is another question where I get why the answer is C. I completely understand. It's C because in a monopolistically competitive firm, when you have profit, in the long run, more firms will join, you face lower demand, and the price goes down. What I don't understand though is like why is B also not like correct? Because I know this is not perfect competition, but like perfect competition, don't they produce where P equals MC equals MR? So like this firm is monopolistically competitive and they always produce where P is over MC, like P is greater than MC. So like here it's saying they will not charge a price that is exactly equal to marginal cost because that's what perfect competition does. So like here it's saying they will not do that. So like why wouldn't that be right also? Because they always charge P over MC, like is greater than.
Yeah, so there's a slight distinction there for monopolistic competition. So even though perfectly competitive firms charge P equals MC equals MR, for monopolistically competitive firms, even in the long run, they don't charge at that point. Because for monopolistically competitive firms, even though they get to the point where they are producing at their basically like they're not making profits, they're still not exactly at the point where they are producing the most efficient outcome. Because remember, for monopolistic competition, there's that weird little piece where they are not as efficient as they should be. And the reason that usually that's okay is because they produce like slightly different products. And consumers are okay with that, but they're never producing exactly the same as a perfectly competitive market outcome.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like that's why it's confusing because they're saying they will not charge a price. So it's obvious they won't charge that price because they always produce at P is greater than MC. If it said they will charge a price that is exactly, obviously that answer would be wrong, but they're saying they will not charge a price.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
that's why I'm
Okay,
like
yeah.
confused.
Not treasure price is exactly equal. Yeah, I think for this one, let me just take another second to read all of the options and read the question one more time. Oh, okay. So this one, it's a little weird because the thing that they're trying to trick you by saying the firm has a constant $0 marginal cost. And so the firm is never going to charge a price of $0.
Yeah, it's yeah, they would always charge a price above $0.
Yeah, and so not charge a price that's exactly.
That's correct. That's what the answer is saying that they won't charge that price. So that's why it's saying they won't charge a price equal to 0 basically. Like that's what the answer is saying. So that's why I was confused. I feel like maybe like would it be a typo? Like should it say they will charge? Because if it says they will
Yeah,
charge, it would then obviously it would be wrong.
yeah, that's cost of 10. Lower demand. Let me think more about this one
Okay.
and try to dig into it a little more. Because yeah, I'm not entirely sure what they're trying to get at with that one. But yeah, you would think that could potentially be correct. So yeah, let me think about that one, and then I'll post something about it. Let me make a note.
I just have a quick question about the rules, like the MR, MC stuff.
Yeah.
So there's like in what we've been learning, there's like three different firms, right? Like monopoly, perfect, and like monopolistic competition, right?
Yes.
So the only thing I'm like a little confused about. So I know perfect competition produces P equals MR equals MC. Is that always like in the short run and in the long run, or is there difference?
For perfect competition,
Yeah, for perfect competition. Is it always P equals MC equals MR, or is it only in the long or short?
it should always be consistent, and that should be true even if the firm is making profits in the short run.
Okay, and then for for the MR equals MC, that's true. Like the MR equals MC. That's the profit maximize for profit maximization for all firms. So like monopoly and monopolistic competition, right? Not for perfect competition, or yeah.
For perfect competition, let me just pull the lecture slides for that. Because I think there was like a little summary, if I'm thinking of it correctly. Yeah, so perfect competition, they still do have that MCMR condition for profit maximization.
But also like adding on the P equals MR, right?
Yes, yeah,
So that's not true for monopoly and monopolistic competition. The P will not equal that. The P will be above that.
correct. Yeah, this is not true for monopolistic competition as well as monopolies.
Okay, and just another quick question. So I've been seeing like a lot of correlation between like long run and short run. So um like is there like a specific rule for monopolies like in the long run and short run, and like monopolistic competition in the long run and short run? Is there like a distinction between like the rules?
Yeah, so the main thing for monopolistic competition, it's not really like a distinction between the two. The main thing for monopolistic competition, and let me pull those slides too, is that they basically in the long run, they just cannot make long run profits.
Yeah, and that's true for isn't that true for like their economic profit would be zero, right? And that's true for monopoly also, no?
Monopoly, not necessarily, because a monopoly is there's only one producer for a
Oh,
monopoly, whereas
so
monopolistic competition, there are multiple ones.
so that's so for perfect competition, there's also zero economic profit in the long
Yes.
run. Okay,
Yeah, for perfect competition, that's true.
okay. Because like I saw on the slides like P equals ATC in the long run and stuff like that. So I was just confused like about like for monopolistic competition if like P equals ATC in the short run as well instead of just the long run.
Yeah, and when it usually talks about like AVC or like ATC, usually those are trying to, for AVC, so average variable cost, it's trying to get you to think about if the firm should enter or exit the market. And
Mhm.
when they mention average total cost, usually that's trying to uh, get you to think about where a firm is going to produce in the long run. So like, for example, see, I don't know if I have any on this one. But basically like, yeah, so the idea that like if marginal cost is less than ATC, uh, they can't actually price goods at marginal cost or the firm would lose money.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so that's it for my questions. I just have another one on the final like extra problems, but I'll just wait until like you go over that with the
Okay.
class.
Okay, perfect. So let me do, okay. So yeah, so 9 and 17. Okay. Okay, so 9 is asking market demand, supply. Okay, yeah, so for this one, when you see that they say a government implements a price floor of $60, all you really need to do is just basically plug that in to see what is going to happen to both sides. So like the first thing you want to do is what they're talking about here, where you need to find the free market equilibrium. So just set the demand and supply equation equal to one another and solve. And then from that point, you know that the $55 price, basically just as a comparison to the $60, that will tell you if it's a binding or non-binding price floor. And so just kind of as like a general thing is that the exam probably won't ask you anything on binding or non-binding, but just kind of keep that in mind, just to make sure to check for that if the price floor that they're giving you is binding or non-binding. So then all you really do from there is you basically just need to find the quantity demanded and the quantity supplied at the price. And so to do that, you just plug in the price floor of $60 into the demand equation, and then also into the supply equation. And then from there, you just subtract the quantity supplied from the quantity demanded to get the correct surplus.
Okay, got it. So if in this case, the price floor, it's technically, it's higher than the market price. So it binds, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So if it was not binding, would we have to do anything?
No, so if it was not binding, you could just say, and there would be an answer here that would say it doesn't change the outcome.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
And then for 17, it's more of a concept question, because on the review, there wasn't ever like an answer because of this private cost was higher than the social cost. Well, I think mine is a little different. Let me just look at my test.
I think those should be switched, yeah, because they normally the social cost is above the private cost.
Yeah.
Actually, it always is, yeah.
Yeah. So for this one, I think on the review that we did Sunday, they said it was a tax, but then it should have been B, right? It should have been subsidized.
Yeah. So B is definitely. Oh, interesting. So they highlighted B but said A. Negative externality, which should be internalized. No. So yeah, A is correct because for a positive externality, you need to subsidize, whereas for a negative externality, you need to tax. So A is definitely the correct answer for this one. Yeah, I'm not sure why B is highlighted.
Okay, and then that's because the private cost is higher than the social cost?
Yeah, and so normally this should actually say this should be social cost and this should be private cost down here. So they screwed up. That question's not a great question. Okay. There's a couple of mistakes there.
I wanted to ask this question, like if on the final there's a question that we're not sure about, like if there was a typo, or if they're like this one that it's not, because right, there's really no right answer here.
Yeah, and I mean, so there technically is a right answer, but the issue is that like the question, the graph is messed up. And so like, if that is an issue on the exam, definitely email me, because I'll be online the entire time. So like if you email me, I'll be able to, respond really quickly.
Oh, so we can do that during the test or after?
No, definitely do it during the test. Yeah, if you have a question during the test, please email me and I will respond.
Yeah, because then I had another question. I mean, I know like on the when we did the review, like it was fine, but on the test that you uploaded, it said something different. So it was something like the names were switched. It was like it talked about the surplus for a certain individual on the graph, but the individual's name was like he had like a completely different name that wasn't any of the three names. So it was a little confusing.
Yeah, so if that definitely happens, please email me, because yeah, that'll definitely, and I'll want to make sure too that either if that is the case, like I can either go in and change it before, if no one else has had that question, or send out an email, or I'll note that then, and then I can give people full credit for other answers as well.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, and let's see, 21. Okay. Okay, so
Also, I have a
21.
question.
Yeah.
Well, we get our grades, like usually we don't get our grades until like a few days later, but like since everyone's mandated to take it at the same time, like will we get our grades like right when we submit it, or is it going to be like we still wait a few days?
No, so the latest you'll get your grades is going to be Monday morning.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
and when I do that, I'll also post the final grades as well, because you basically have your everything except the finals graded right now. But then I'll also put the final will be graded. Probably it'll have a curve, and then also the final grade too.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so 21, we're looking at monopolistic firm. So you're given demand, marginal cost, total cost, bankruptcy. Okay, so for this one, the weird thing that you just need to remember is that when they tell you marginal cost and they tell you that it's a perfectly competitive market, all you need to do is just set demand and marginal cost equal to one another, and then just solve for that, and solve like you would for a normal perfect competitive firm, and that'll give you the equilibrium quantity and price for 21.
Okay, got it. And just from earlier, so there's three firms, right? Monopolistic competition. I mean, like monopolistic competitive, and then perfect competition. Those are the three.
Yes, yeah, and there's kind of a weird. There are also like oligopolies and duopolies, but those are kind of like a form of monopolistic competition.
Got it. But for those, we don't really have to. I mean, since they're part kind of like a monopolistic competition, we don't really have to know like equations for it, or like for example for this, right?
Yeah, the main thing, and let me just, since you brought that up, that's good to just mention it. For chapter 17, the big thing that you'll want to remember for like the oligopoly and duopoly is kind of questions like this, where you're looking at firms' profits. And another question where you're asked, and let me see if I can just find it. Yeah, so a question like this, where you're basically trying to determine how far a firm is going to cheat before they will stop cheating. So like, what is the point that the firm is not going to cheat on the agreement? So a question like that is important for duopoly and oligopoly, but yeah, the equation one, definitely not for the duopoly and oligopoly.
And duopoly and I forgot to say the other one. They act like competitive monopolistic.
Yeah, they act like monopolistically competitive. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Professor, would you be able to like explain this a little bit like more in depth? Like what do you mean like where they'll stop cheating?
Yeah, so let me see. I think there was a question on the final review.
On the final review, that one is just like basically like what will happen, like one firm cheated, so like what would happen? That just like you just go up to like two quantities on that one. So, like
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, it wasn't this one. I can post, if it would be helpful, like another question that's similar to this one, but like has kind of every single example. So like I can post it for you to do it, and then also have like the fully explained answer, if that would be helpful too, to kind of review
Yeah, that
that.
would be helpful, but
Okay.
I'm still confused. Like how would you know where like they stop like to cheat?
Yeah, let me see. I think I have actually kind of an Excel thing that I was going over with another student, that would kind of show that, because it's weird, because the first thing you have to remember about these firms is there's one firm that's always going to cheat first. And so that firm is always going to be the firm that kind of like starts it off, starts off the cheating process. So let's see. Yeah, okay. So let me, can you all see this Excel document?
We can only see the collusion versus self-interest.
Okay, so let me share my Excel doc. Okay, so this is like kind of what you're going to see. So you're not going to be given, you might not even be given this. You probably will be, but you definitely will not be given this. So this is where you'll have like the price quantity and then also the total revenue. And so in this market, you have two firms and you're given information that says X, so firm X breaks the agreement first. And so you're initially at a situation like this, where basically the firms are going to split profits evenly. And so from here, what you have to do is basically determine where you're going to go and how far they're going to go down to end up at this outcome. And so basically what you have to do is, so you say, okay, so we know we're at this outcome right here, and firm X is going to be the first firm to cheat. So because firm X cheats first, they are going to sell 200, a quantity of 200 at this price. And then firm Y is only going to sell 100 at this price, because remember, firm Y did not cheat first. So they're going to still sell the quantity under this old agreement. Does that kind of make sense, at least for that first step?
Yeah, so basically all we have to do is just, because we won't be given the profit for X and profit for Y, right? So we'll just have to divide the 7,200 by 2, and that's exactly what they make. So profit for X would be like, if they break the agreement, profit for X would just be the next price up times that new quantity, right?
Yeah, and so
And
basically like,
Y would just be the same, like 36 times 200, or would they also stay at like at a higher price and a higher quantity?
yeah, so it's, so like basically what you can imagine is that's pretty much the process. The main thing though is that, so like here you have X and Y have a different outcome because X cheated and Y didn't. But then at 30, you get back to the same situation where they're both making the same.
Yeah, because
In
then Y, because then X just stays and then Y cheats.
exactly. And then for
Um,
27, then X is going to cheat again.
yeah, so basically would they just stop cheating where their profits go back down, or?
Exactly. So like this is going to be the outcome for this one, because so let's say if X cheated, they would actually earn less money if they moved to the next profit level. And so basically what you have to do is just figure out what is the point where if either firm cheats, they're not going to make any additional profit.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But I just have one more quick question.
Yeah.
Well, in the beginning outcome, it would be like for profit for X, it would be like 33 times 300, right? Like to get like what they make profit, or it would be like 33 times half of 300. Like how do you get that 6,600 like number?
Yeah, so for this one, basically what you do is, so assume that at 300, so since X is the firm that cheats, what you do is basically take the new quantity minus the old quantity, and this is, X is going to produce that entire additional quantity. So
At
you
$33?
yeah, at $33. And that's true for basically all of them. Whenever X cheats, that's going to be the condition.
So so that would be 3,300. Do you just add that? No, no, you wouldn't. Like
Yeah, so like what you have to imagine here is, like, so let's say for the quantity for a price of 36. So let's say, and let me actually do another column.
It's like I keep doing like they do the 36 times 200, and then I added the 100 times 3,300, and then I get 6,900. So I don't know how to get like 6,600.
Yeah, so like let me quickly do this, and maybe this will help a little bit, because I think the weird thing is, like, you have to imagine the quantity differentiating at each level. And then here they're going to split it. And then here, and they're going to split it again. And then here, it's going to be 5, 4, and hypothetically. Okay. So let me. So this is what you can basically think about for quantity. So like at 36, firm X is producing 100 and firm Y is producing 100. But then when firm X cheats, they are taking that 100 new quantity that's being sold, moving from 36 to 33, and they are producing all of that additional quantity.
So then that's okay. So I understand. So they're basically taking it away from Y.
Exactly. Yeah, and
Okay.
it's not necessarily taking it away, but they're just producing all of the new quantity themselves.
Okay. So Y would just stay like Y is just staying the same, and then that's like the extra 100. Okay, I think I understand.
Yeah, because then basically what you do is then you take the 200 that X is producing here, then
Multiply
X
by 30.
charges exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Would you be able to share this like on Blackboard or something?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, let me make a note
Thank you.
to post that.
Thank you.
And let me see, which question was this referencing? I'll have to remember which question this is referencing to post that question as well. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions on this actually before I move on back to the practice final? Because this is a pretty important process to understand how the price setting and kind of where the firms will ultimately come out.
Just as a general question for this one, it's just they'll go ahead and split it from the total revenue, right? From the very beginning, from where they produce the highest.
Yeah, and there may be occasions where it'll like give you more things, and it'll tell you that like they're currently at this scenario or something. But if that's the case, yeah, they always will be in the initial scenario splitting the profit.
So here, the highest total revenue is 14,700. So they'll each produce 350.
Yeah, so yeah, this is the highest revenue, and then because of that, they will I think it was a Nash equilibrium outcome is what they called it for this one, is going to be this. So this will be the natural outcome for the market.
Got it. And then whenever you do it, it's 350 times 21, right? Since or you do it from the bottom, like.
I'll probably always work from the bottom up,
Okay.
just because that's kind of, I think that's how most of them will present, because they usually start at a more monopoly outcome, and then they kind of slowly move closer and closer to perfect competition.
Okay, got it. Because they're not producing 700 each, they're producing 350 each. So
Exactly.
okay.
Yeah, and like if they were smart and they were able to collude without breaking the agreement, this is where they should produce, because this is where they maximize total revenue and profit.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So let's say, like, would the Nash equilibrium, like the green highlight, like, because like that's similar to the same question that we just like number 40, like you just go up 2 boxes because each firm would break once. So like would that answer, because that's the same answer as if we go all the way from the bottom, like for the question, like where would they stop cheating? Like is that always like the same answer, like the Nash equilibrium equals like where they would stop cheating?
Yes. Yeah.
So like if the question were to ask like where would they stop cheating, like do we have to like do all of this math, or is that just to like understand why like that's the process?
I think there may be one question on the final that you do have to do the math for.
Like all of this, like figuring out the quantities and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so like if you do have a question like that, I would say unless you are really good about like quickly doing the math and writing it down, kind of creating like an Excel template like this, just so you can plug in the numbers and it'll like auto fill for you. So like you have these formulas ready to go. That would probably be a useful way to do it, just because then you don't have to like type everything in. Then you can just kind of automatically say, I have this ready to go. I'm going to enter the numbers and then it's just going to tell me the answer.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Did anyone else have any other questions on this one before we move back to the practice final? Okay, so let me switch. And okay. I think we were on 20, let me see.
I think it was 21.
21? Yeah, that sounds right. Or did we just finish 21 and we're going?
We just finished. Yes, it was
Okay.
22.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so 22. So continuing this at the same setup, but now they are asking, okay, so given current perfect competitive market outcome, one would expect that. Okay, and we know from this that perfect competition, let me see, I think there's, okay. So for 22, you kind of actually have to go back 2 questions, unfortunately, just because they're wanting you to think about the profit, and remember that the firms are making a profit. And so for 22, because they're saying, so now it's a perfectly competitive market outcome, what would you expect in the long run? And so because they are currently producing at a profit and because they are monopolistically competitive, you know the market price is too high. So the price that consumers are being charged in the market is too high, because for monopolistically competitive firms and monopoly firms, we know that they charge a price above marginal cost. So then the first piece of that you'll know is that you want to make sure that any answer you choose, the market price will decrease. So you can eliminate A and you can eliminate D. So now you're between B and C. So do monopolistically competitive and monopoly markets have more or less firms than perfect competition? And so you know that for perfect competition, they always have the maximum number of firms. And so because of that, the number of firms in the market is going to increase when a market moves from a monopolistically competitive market to a perfectly competitive market, because during the process of transition to the long run, more firms are going to enter the market because they're going to compete away existing firms' profits.
Okay, got it.
Okay, and the next one was 23. Operation as a monopolist, perfectly, what was the resulting deadweight loss? Okay, yeah, so this one, that's not a great explanation. So for this one, basically what you want to do is remember, and let me, because the graph is actually like, that is a good idea, just because that'll tell you what you need to figure out. So like we have demand, this is our marginal cost, that's MC, and this is demand. And so we know that the monopolist is going to have some form of deadweight loss. So we can just say this is the monopolist's deadweight loss. So similar to like the taxation questions where they're asking you about deadweight loss, you need to find the price that consumers are paying for the goods. So this is the, let me write that in a different color. So this is the price that consumers are paying in the market for that good. Then you also need to find the intersection point here, and this is going to be, let's just pretend that actually intersects. So then you have to figure out the intersection price where marginal revenue and marginal costs are. So that's the second point you need. Then you also need the quantity at the monopoly outcome, which I think was in 21 or 22, one of the initial ones, you figure this out. So you'll need that. And then the final piece that you need is the quantity at the perfectly competitive outcome, which let's say QC. And to find QC, you can just set the demand equation equal to the marginal cost equation. And then that'll give you the quantity that you need for that one. Yeah, this one has a lot of pieces that you need to figure out where what deadweight loss is.
Because we need to find the price, right, for the quantity.
Yeah, so you basically have to find four things: the price that the monopolist is charging, so that the price up here, then the intersection point between marginal cost and marginal revenue, then also the quantity that the monopolist is producing, and then also the quantity that the perfectly competitive firm is producing. In this one here, you can just get, and I think this one is the least intuitive, you can just get by taking or putting marginal cost and demand setting them equal to one another and just finding the quantity.
Okay, got it. Because in this case, the marginal cost line is the same thing as a supply curve, right?
Yeah. Treat the marginal cost curve here as the supply curve.
And that's because it's a competitive market.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
How do we find the intersection between marginal cost and marginal revenue again?
Yeah, let me see for this one. CV demand, marginal cost, total cost. And, okay, so this one they're basically, they're giving you the price for the price and quantity for, so they're giving you this price for demand and this quantity for the monopoly. So what you can do is, because you notice that marginal cost intersects marginal revenue at the quantity that the monopoly is producing, you plug this quantity into the marginal cost equation.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, but yeah, that one, this is a tough one.
Can we expect something like this on the test? Or would we have more, like, would they give us like a graph with numbers?
I think there might be something similar to this on the test. So yeah, definitely make sure it's not going to be like the thing where you're going through like the entire process. They had like 50 questions on this one, but they could definitely give you something like this and expect you to figure this out.
Yeah, because this question has like 4 algebra problems within that one question.
Yeah, they wouldn't be linked like that, but they definitely could just give you a question like this and expect you to find all of those pieces.
Okay. And then that was my other question. I noticed with this practice final, the questions were linked to each other. Is it like that on the final?
If it is, there are only 2. There would be no more than 2 that were linked.
Got it.
Okay, so let's see. So 17. Clear the drawings. Okay, so 17. Yeah, so 17, for some reason, the highlight, the correct answer is A. I don't know why B was highlighted. And then also the labels on these 2 were reversed. So it should be, this should be social cost and this should be private cost. Okay, 18 and 19. Okay. So 18 is giving us a table, private cost. Which of the following statements is correct? Yeah, so for this one, the way they produce this table, I think, is actually really useful. And so I would definitely suggest, like, if you see a question like this, to kind of think that this would be a useful thing to produce to get to the answer. Especially because, so like for this one, they're talking about, so refer to market with external costs. Which of the following statements is correct? So when you're looking and when you've produced this, you can see that total surplus declines when the 3rd unit of output is produced. So like we have positive here, we have even here, and then we become negative very quickly. So then what they're saying with this is, so like for D, so D isn't really relevant, so you can cross out D because that's not really a good answer. For B, so they're mentioning a tax of $4 per unit would enable this market to move from equilibrium quantity of output to the socially optimal level of output. So that wouldn't be true because we see the external cost here is $2, and so $4 would be too high. So we can eliminate B. And then for A is asking, so if the external cost per unit was 0 instead of 2, then the socially efficient quantity of output would be 4. So that's also not true. And you can just see that from by basically looking at the relationship between the private value and private cost. Because basically for that one, all you want to do is just see where do those intersect, and they actually intersect at 3 as well. So then that would give you the information you need to eliminate A as well. So then C would be the only correct answer.
Okay, so like whenever we get questions like these, do we just like automatically try to like list out the social cost and then total surplus and then like apply the findings onto the answers and then like eliminate?
Yeah, for these questions, especially like really wordy questions, I always like to do process of elimination just because usually you can eliminate like at least 2, just because like for D, we were able to eliminate that one really quickly. And then B, we were also able to eliminate quickly without even looking at this. And technically for, if you were really rushed for time, you wouldn't even necessarily need to do these 2, because you would also just see that for 3, the private value equals the private cost. So then A, you would know A is also not correct. So that would only leave C is the only possible choice.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, and let me see for 19 too. Oh yeah, okay. Was the table on this one confusing? Was that the question that you had?
Oh, I think it's the name. I think it was different.
Oh, okay, yeah. So yeah, the one of the ones that was uploaded, yeah, the name was off, but the I think the answer is still the same, even though the name's different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's why I was confused. Yeah.
Yeah. So just totally ignore that.
Okay.
So for this question, how like do you know when to do cumulative instead of like adding 340 plus 480 plus 420?
Yeah, so for this one, because they're specifically asking for David, so you know that you would not include Edward and Frank. And then when they say like cumulative value, I'm not sure why the person doing this used that phrase. It's basically you just add up David's value. So like 340 plus 260, and then 340, 260, 160 for 3. That's a little weird. That's a weird way to phrase it. You basically just add up his willingness to pay.
Got it. Because the other questions we've done in the past is like if the town is voting on it, how many people would vote? That's when you do the other kind, like when you do you would do 340 plus 480 plus 420 and then divide it by 3.
Exactly. Yeah. And so the key thing here to know that you don't need to do that is they're just asking you specifically about one of the people rather than like everyone or the entire town.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. 40. Okay. Yeah. For this one, for 40, actually, is that the same? Sorry, let me see really quickly. I think that might actually be
the same one we were talking earlier.
Okay, yeah, and so good. I found the question because I didn't actually remember which question I prepared this table for. So that's really good. So I will definitely post this, and sorry, so you can actually see what I'm talking about. So for this question, basically what you want to do is you want to find the point where if either firm cheats on the agreement, they're actually going to make less profit. And so you do that by actually saying, and I'll just do for between 36 and 33 just to kind of quickly recap, but basically you just want to try to take, so like at 36, they're splitting the profit but then firm X is going to cheat. So they are basically going to capture the entire additional quantity, moving from 36 to 33. So then they're going to take their new quantity of 200 and multiply it by the 33 or the price. But because firm Y did not cheat, they are going to still produce at the old quantity, which they were producing at before, which was 100. And so now they're going to take that quantity, but they're going to get a lower price because firm X cheated. So now they're going to just take 100 multiplied by the price at 33. And so you basically just continue that process until you arrive at the Nash equilibrium, where no one can be made better off if they cheat. And I will definitely post this and reference it to question 40. Okay. Let me see. Were there any other questions that anyone had on the practice final review?
Can you go over number 1 on the like the extra questions that you gave us?
Yes, definitely. Okay, so yeah, so number one is basically trying to confuse you. So it's this like really kind of weird, complicated word problem where they're saying like, so there are two firms in a market producing the same product with no fixed costs. So the firms all have a marginal cost of $20 and market demand is this equation. So consumers will purchase goods from the firm that charged the lowest price. That means that the firm with the lowest price gets the entire market. And then the question wants you to answer, what is the unique Nash equilibrium for this duopoly where each firm sets the same price? So for this one, what you're given by the question is this piece right here. This is the important piece that you need to remember or need to have top of mind when you are looking at a question like this. So basically, when it says the firm that charges the lowest price gets the entire market, and it tells you that marginal cost is $20, you know that the firm that charges its marginal cost of $20 is going to take the entire market. So because that is going to be true, that means the ultimate outcome of this game is going to be the price is going to be the marginal cost of $20 because that is the lowest price that the firm can charge where they are still not losing any money.
So I have one question about this. So it says where each firm sets the same price. So like, wouldn't the firm that sets $20, the other firm will just pick $20 also?
Yeah, and so because of that, though, they're going to split the market. But if one of the firms charged like $19.90, they would be losing money, and then they would eventually go out of business.
And that's because, like, basically it costs them $20. So they're basically making no profit, but they just want the whole market, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and the reason that is the outcome is because they know that at this outcome right here, if they charged like $20.50, the other firm would be incentivized to charge, slightly lower, and that would just continue until they couldn't charge a lower price.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And for the second question, so this one actually kind of this one is a slightly simpler version of, which question was it? It was like the tangerine one that we went over, and I'm trying to remember. I think it was 20. Yeah. So the one on the extra problems is basically a simpler version of 23 because they give you marginal revenue, whereas this one gives you total cost. So for this one, basically, you're just kind of following that same process where you are finding an equilibrium quantity, then, or sorry, the equilibrium quantity, then the equilibrium price, and then you need to determine where the marginal cost and marginal revenue are going to be at. So that's how you find that like bottom triangle price that we talked about. And then the final piece is to just remember that to find the perfectly competitive outcome, you need to set the quantity demanded equal to the marginal cost to get that quantity. And then you just plug those into the deadweight loss equation to get deadweight loss. So just kind of a good thing. I would definitely remember kind of review this example as well, but then definitely review this example too, because they're slightly different, but basically the same. Okay. And before, since we're, oh yeah, 31, I can definitely review 31. Okay. Okay, so current market outcome for a monopolistically competitive firm. So given the graph, and the correct answer is, so short run equilibrium, we would expect this firm's profit to move from its current value to 0. Yes, and so we know that this firm is making a profit at, or actually this, include this firm, short equilibrium, we expect this firm's profit to move from its current value towards 0. Interesting, because yeah, this firm is definitely making a loss in the graph that they give you, which is not helpful. Because basically the price that they're charging in the market is 140, but then their average total cost is 160, so they're losing $20 per unit sold. So yeah, that is, expect the firm's profit to move. Yeah, so this answer is more like a general kind of thing about monopolistically competitive firms. But on the exam, if you see something like this where it's like, doesn't make sense because the answers are not following, definitely email me, because this graph should not go with this question. It doesn't make sense with the answer.
Well, right, because then how would it be not B, right? Because it could also be B.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, so yeah, that's why, yeah, if you notice anything like that, definitely email me, because yeah, this graph with this question doesn't make sense.
And in this case, would we get another question, or would we just like, would we get like, instead of being graded for 40, we'll get graded for 39 questions?
Yeah, that would probably be the outcome, is basically we would just give you, we would either take this question away or give everyone a point for the question.
Okay, got it, thank you.
Yeah.
And one final question, do we need to show work for this? No,
definitely not. I mean, if you want to do your own work just to like help yourself, that's fine. But yeah, we don't need to see any work because we're, since it's all online, we don't need to see that.
Okay, and then this is just like the other test when we can go back to the previous question?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Did anyone else have any other questions that they wanted to go over? Because I know we're a little bit over time, so I don't want to keep anyone too long. And if no one has any other questions, definitely backtracking is allowed, definitely. But yeah, if you have any questions like on the exam or during the exam, feel free to email me. I will be online during the exam period, so definitely let me know like if you notice anything weird. And then also if you have any other questions before the exam too. But good luck, and yeah. Have a good weekend.
Thank you so much.